What's up, fellas? So y'all know I'm about to break something when I'm sitting here with a RadioMaster radio and a whole bunch of parts and a Spectrum hat on. That's how we know stuff's about to get serious. All right. So, what we got in store for you guys tonight is I'm going to be doing the upgrade of the TX16S to this big swath of aluminum upgrade parts and a new faceplate. And hopefully we'll get it right, because it's going to look sweet if we do. But what I want to do is kind of get the camera angle situated here a little bit. And this, you guys might get sick, and I apologize. But I want to put this in a position where you can kind of see what's going on. So how's that look? Like if I have the radio like here, I think y'all will be able to see most of that, right? How's this camera angle? Does this work? All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started, because that's how we roll here. So first thing we're gonna do is pull the battery out. Now I've got a battery tray in here with two Samsung lithium ion cells, but it's just a standard, you know, JST, I think it's a JST PH or XH or something like that connector. Same thing you'd find on like a balance cell for like a 2S battery. That's all this takes. And it's got two 18650 lithium ion cells in there. Those are both, I think those are both 3500 milliamp hour batteries. And we've also got our crossfire unit here. That's right, Roberto. If I break this thing, I'm blaming it on everything but me. And then I'm just going to tell y'all to go buy Spectrum. All right. So I think where I'm going to start, I know that these rubber side panels need to come off, and they're just kind of pressure fit in there. I've had this radio apart once before because I was changing the tension on the gimbals. And I think this just lifts up. If I can remember where the best place to grab it is, here on the bottom, baby. There we go. That's one side panel off. And the only upgrade that we're not doing tonight is we're not doing the leather side grips. I think the rubber side grips look fine. The leather ones are cool, but I would be wanting like the black leather ones. All right, so we've got those off. And next we've got, I think it's only 4 screws that hold this back panel on, but we do need to take the 2 out of the top. So there's 2 screws right here that hold like the antenna assembly onto the top of the radio. So we're going to take those out, and then the 4 off the back. Let's see what size those guys are. That's not it. Looks like they're probably 2.5 millimeter. Yep, so those are 2.5 millimeter hex bolts holding that antenna assembly in place. Side piece? What side piece you talking about? Pilot Ryan. I had to magnetize this driver. Apparently these are non-magnetic screws. Interesting. The other thing that's interesting is these are not machine screws. Those are like self-tappers. See that? Those are not machine screws. So if I forget where any of this stuff goes later, I need y'all to remind me where it came from. Alright, we got 4 screws. That go around the perimeter. We don't need to take these back rubber grips off. Like right here and right here, we don't need to remove those to get the case off. Alright. There we go. So I believe that's all 4 screws. That hold the back case on. So I should be able to lift out that antenna assembly just like that to see how that just came right off. And we should be able to lift the back of that case off. Now this is an updated version of the TX16S, so it does have a speaker on the rear of the case, and if I turn it very carefully, you can see that speaker right here, and we've got 2 wires. One of them goes into the main board, and the other one is plugged into the front speaker. So this goes to the front speaker, and then we've got another one here that goes to the main motherboard. We're just going to disconnect those 2 connections, and then we can take that whole rear assembly and just set it off to the side for now. Now we do have a new handle that we're going to be putting on, but we'll take care of that later. Alright, so now we've got all of our guts for the TX16S exposed. And I think what we're going to do to kind of make things a little bit easier on us is we're going to disconnect. So right here and right here, this is our scroll wheel assembly, which is going to need to come out, and this is our navigation buttons. So on the front, we've got the navigation buttons on the front of the radio. That's what this board goes to, and that board actually gets replaced. And then this board is for the scroll wheel assembly. and both of those are going to need to come out. I mean, everything that's in here is going to need to come out, but we're going to go ahead and disconnect these cables, because that's going to give us the room that we need to pull. All right, so we got that disconnected. We've got that disconnected. And what that's going to allow us to do is be able to get in here. We've also got these two connectors here and here that go up to our gimbal assemblies. So we're going to pull those cables as well. So that is our right gimbal cable. That is our left gimbal. So now we've got those out of the way. And now we'll go ahead and pull out the gimbal assemblies. The gimbals are each held in by 4 screws. So we're going to go ahead and pull those out. So it looks like it might be easier to go ahead and pull out the, or at least, you know, take off the screws for the 2 side pots. So our sliders, they're mounted to little boards. It looks like removing those circuit boards is going to clear enough room for us to be able to pull that 4th screw from the gimbal. So we're going to pull those 2 screws out of the side pots first, and that's going to give us the clearance that we need to get the gimbals out. And one thing that's pretty convenient here on the inside, it looks like a lot of the internal screws that hold these boards down are the same. Alright, so we've got that side pot, or that slider, out of the way. We'll go ahead and get this slider out of the way as well. Now, just for reference, I did pre-game a little bit, and I've watched a couple of other videos of some other folks doing this. So I'd like to give a little shout out to RC Video Reviews, who did an excellent tutorial video on swapping out the faceplate and the aluminum CNC kit for the TX16S, and you know, he had the excellent suggestion where instead of, you know, removing all of these cables that attach to the potentiometers, to the sliders and the switches, to leave all those connected, and as we pull that other card out of here, it's going to leave all this stuff connected, so when we transplant it back onto the new faceplate, it's nice and easy. So now I've got clearance to this last screw. You guys probably won't be able to see it, but it's there. And it's a lot easier to get to that with those slider boards removed. Now we're pulling out this final screw. Alright, and that that should let us get out this gimbal assembly, and it does feel like it's loosey-goosey. There we go. So now we can pull out that, this is the right gimbal, so it does all the self-centering. And we've also got that aluminum kind of beauty plate that goes over the gimbal. This one is black. We're going to be replacing that with these fancy red ones that come in the CNC update kit. We'll kind of move that off to the side as well. Or maybe we'll just throw it over here into the list of stuff that we're, in the pile of stuff that we're not going to be using anymore. All right, so now we're just taking all the screws out of the right gimbal stick. Or actually it'd be the left stick that we're working on here. And this is the fourth screw. That should allow it to lift right on out. Alright, so here we've got our left stick, and that's our throttle and rudder. So we'll set that off to the side. And, you know, just so you guys can get a look at the, you know, the gimbals that we've got going on here. These are Hall effect gimbals, so there's no potentiometers there. There's just a Hall effect sensor and like a little magnet on the end, and I don't know, you know, if it's ever going to zoom in on that or what, but you know, there's no potentiometer on there. So if you guys were ever kind of curious how Hall effect gimbals work, I mean, there you go. It's just like a bearing that supports the side of the gimbal, and there's a little sensor on a board right there, and that's all that's in there. You know, there's no electronic moving parts, so these are very well done. We'll set that off to the side. Let's see, what can we pull off next? I think from here we're going to pull off this multifunction module, and we've got a nice little cable bundle that goes to the multifunction module that plugs into the main board. I want to go ahead and get that unplugged first. Okay. So we've got the multifunction module, which is this piece right here. That is now unplugged from the main board, and actually, I do need to remove that. I think that would definitely make things easier to remove it, but I'm just going to leave it connected to the antenna. So you can see where the antenna comes down here. The antenna that goes up into our main, you know, aerial comes down this way and plugs in to the multifunction module right here. I'm going to leave all that plugged in because it's got like a waxy material over it. I just don't want to pull that out. It's not like I would hurt it if I did, but I'm just going to leave it kind of in here when I pull it out. You know, because there's a little bracket that it mounts to, like a little plastic bracket that's held in by these two screws right here and right here. That bracket needs to come out to get that ribbon cable off that goes to the motherboard. So we're going to pull those two screws here and this one here, and that should allow us to lift that multifunction module out of the way and give us access to be able to remove that ribbon cable without tearing anything else up. And these screws are a little bit longer, so you know, I've got what looks like a lot of 8mm self tappers. You know, probably 3mm by 8 that have held everything else in up to this point, and these look like 3mm by 10 self tappers. They're a little bit longer. And then we'll pull out this screw. And that should allow our multifunction module to lift up out of the way, and it does. And that's another 8mm screw, but that one's got a little bit of waxy stuff on it, so we know where that came from. So with that out of the way, now we can separate the ribbon cable. So there's a ribbon cable, there's this board from the ribbon cable. This board goes up to all of our connections that go to all of our switches and potentiometers across the front and top of the radio. So we want this whole board assembly to come out as one piece. And it looks like the last thing that we have that connects that board to the motherboard is this ribbon cable. And to get that ribbon cable separated, what we're going to do is there's a little black bar right here that you just lift up. And what I'm going to do is just get my thumbnails under there. You guys are not going to be able to see this. And just kind of pry up on that board, or on that bar, and what you'll see is that bar just lifts. It's like a lever, and when that bar lifts up, it allows you to just back that ribbon cable out of there nice and easy. We'll get us a little helper tool here. You can get that ribbon cable out of there nice and easy, just like that, and now, you know, this upper board assembly is now separated from the main circuit board. Okay, we've got a couple more screws down here holding that kind of auxiliary board in place. And those are more of the shorter 8mm screws. Alright, so again, I mean, it looks like most of the screws in here are these 8mm kind of self-tappers. These guys. Fred Baird, man. Thank you, sir. You never know, man. I might need that. So, we've got those screws out, and it looks like, yeah, we do have some movement on that board now. So now we're going to take all of the nuts off of the switches, both our front and top mounted switches, And that should allow those boards, because those are all mounted, like your two front switches and your two top switches are mounted with a circuit board that holds them all together. So we're going to work on that now, getting these guys out. And alright, that's the first one off. And some of these switch nuts you're going to be able to loosen by hand. Some of them you're going to have to loosen by force. And I don't have the little special tool for the switch nuts, so I just take a pair of needle nose pliers and stick it down into those little recesses and give it a little twist. Get that little beauty plate out of there. We don't need that guy anymore. Let's see. That might be easier to do with a flathead screwdriver. Hey, thanks George Watts, C Mafia, thanks guys. I appreciate it. God, we got this. that one is on there, good and tight. Good and tight. There we go. Now that guy's coming off. Now one of the things that has fallen out, we've got like little pieces falling out here and there. One of the things was our power button. The power button fell out. That's going to be replaced in the CNC kit, so we don't need that anymore. We'll throw that over here. And also the 6-way switch covers, the little LED lens covers fell out that goes along the top here. Hopefully we put that in the right way. I think it only goes in one way. And we'll set that off to the side because we will need that for the new faceplate. Come on, man. Come on, man. There we go. That's coming loose. That one's coming loose. Man, that was on there good. Some of these switch nuts, man, they got those things on there with, you know, a massive amount of force. Way more than you need to hold these things down. Alright, so everything's loose there on the left side. We'll start working on the right side. And, you know, you guys can start seeing that it's looking a little more crazy. You know, as we get more and more stuff separated, you know, it's starting to get more and more barren on the front. There's like nothing left. All the buttons and everything are coming out. And I'm pretty sure the same, you know, Adonis that they had tighten up the switch nuts on one side is the same person that did it on this side, so they're probably tight as hell. Let's see if maybe there's an easier way to finagle these switch nuts off, because, man, that's not it. That's not the way. Come on. There we go. It's a good thing I don't have to reuse these switch nuts, because that one got mangled up a little bit. Oops. Let me see if... Nope. That one is also stupid tight. All right. Oh, come on, man. Hammer and chisel is about right. All right, so we got all the switch nuts out. So now we can go back over here to this side, and we can see that that board has come out. We've got all of our switch nuts and stuff, or our switch assemblies are kind of just hanging out over here. We'll go ahead and get those out here as well. So everything just kind of dangles. Now we'll just keep all that together, and when we put it back in on the other side, it's all gonna go in nice and good. And the last thing that we're gonna remove, well, one of the last pieces is this board that has our it's our USB jack. So the board that has our USB, and I think that might be like a trainer cable, you know, it's like a headphone jack. I don't recall exactly what that's used for, because I don't personally use it. And that, again, is held in with those very familiar, you know, 3mm by 8mm self-tappers. So that should come out, and then we've got our last one that holds our two potentiometers for our front pots. that board will be the last thing that comes out, and that should release that secondary board. Yep, and those are more of those 8mm, 3mm by 8mm self-tappers, all Phillips head. So that should, our front pot should come out there, and they do. So now all of that secondary board with the front pots, the USB connectors, the antenna assembly, the multifunction module, all of our switches, all of that stuff all comes out as one piece if you do it just right. And we're going to set that off to the side here. That's a bunch of crazy stuff. So now we see we got a lot more emptiness inside there. Most of the electronic assembly on the inside is now all pulled apart. We do need, there's like a, I forget what they call this thing, but I think it's called a light guide. And that uses a very small screw, so we'll set that off to the side. And that light guide allows, you know, just illuminates the LED on the front panel of the radio. And this goes for the power button, so we're going to move that over to the side. And we've got two more up here that we'll go ahead and remove now. Again, more of these 8mm, you know, very familiar with the size now. 3mm by 8mm self-tappers almost everywhere. And that front panel where the potentiometers go should now pop off of the radio just like that. So that is now separated, and we can set that off to the side. At this point, we're going to go ahead and remove the, let's see, what would be easier? I think removing the main board is probably the easier part to do now. And there's 4 screws holding the main board in. There's a screw here, a screw here, a screw here, and a screw here. Right next to this connector that goes to, there's a little motor there with a weight on it, and that is what does the haptic feedback, you know, that makes the whole thing, you know, kind of have those light vibrations. So that's our haptic feedback motor. In fact, we can go ahead and disconnect that guy now. And that we won't be removing. That's going to actually stay in the case, because this center part of the case, you know, right here is not coming off, just the front panel. We'll remove those 4 screws and go ahead and get the main board assembly removed. And again, it's more of those same 3mm by 8mm screws. I mean, we're seeing these all over the place. So, in fact, there's only 2 that have not used that same screw. So I'm not really worried about making sure that all the screws go back in the right spots, because all the screws so far have been pretty much the same. You know, with the exception being the screws that hold the 2 case halves together. Almost everything else has been identical. All right. So now the motherboard should be loose. Now we want to be careful as we lift the motherboard. We're going to lift the top half here and then kind of pull up on it, because we got some things that need to line up on the bottom. There we go. We got that separated. Now we're going to take that main board and we're going to flip it up. And the reason we're doing that is you're going to see we have 2 more connectors, one here and one here. All right, and those are the same style where they have that little black lever there that we need to lift up. It just opens up about 90 degrees, and that ribbon cable will just slip right out of there. We've got one here, one here. So we'll just lift those up. So that one's lifted, and that ribbon cable just slides right out. We'll lift this one. All right, and you'll see once we lift them up, those ribbon cables slide right out. So that should be the main board can now come out. We'll set that off to the side. All right, and we still have our LCD and stuff in there. Before we remove the LCD, we're going to remove our navigation button. So we're going to remove that board here, and we've got another board here for our scroll wheel. We'll remove the navigation buttons first. That's 2 screws. And again, 3mm by 8mm self-tappers. I mean, they're all over the place, so it shouldn't be a shocker at this point. Kind of what you're going to be running into. Most of the screws are identical. So that board can come out. Now, this board actually gets replaced because of the function of the button press mechanism on the new buttons is different. So this board will be replacing this one, and that top button here is offset a little bit on the new board. So this one actually is going to get thrown to the side in pieces that we don't need anymore. Now we've got the scroll wheel. So the scroll wheel board we're going to be keeping. But we will be putting a new CNC scroll wheel on there, and again, same 3mm by 8mm. Maybe not all the same. That one's a little longer. That looks like a 3mm by 15. So the top of the scroll wheel uses a longer screw there. But that'll be good to remember later. All right, and there's our scroll wheel assembly. We'll be replacing that scroll wheel later. For now, we're just going to set that off to the side. And one of the last things that we're going to be removing from the case is our LCD assembly. And that looks like it's held in by 3 screws that go around the edges. Let's go ahead and get those out. One shocker, 3mm by 8mm. Our LCD should come out, and it does. Beautiful. So our LCD, we've still got the protective plastic cover on our LCD assembly. I just don't usually pull them off. There's no need to. So we'll set that off to the side. And that is most of the bits and pieces. We do need to get those little plastic buttons. Actually, we don't need to pull those out because we've got new ones that are going in. All right. So now we need to pull this part of the case apart. So this front panel is going to come off of this, kind of this center ring. And that's what we're working on now, and I believe that's 8 screws that we've got here. There's 2 in here, and 2 along the bottom, and perhaps 1 more on the center. We'll see if we need to remove that one or not. And hey, look at that. It's another big pile of these 3mm by 8mm screws. So, I mean, that screw is used in abundance in this build, which, you know, that makes it really easy to do this kind of work, you know, without having to worry about what screw goes where when you're putting everything back together. Okay. All right. Yep, so that whole panel will now separate from this central plastic piece, you know. So this is kind of like the center chassis that everything kind of bolts to. You know, the front plate bolts to this and the back plate goes to it as well. So this center piece is, you know, kind of the, you know, the heart of it all. Now, we do still have some more screws inside here that I'm going to go ahead and remove, because this part of the front plate does come off, and I'm just going to reuse those screws to put the new faceplate together. Imagine that, more 3mm by 8mm screws. Alright, and now that front panel should pop out. And it does. And that's our old plastic buttons. I'm going to set those off to the side. We've got more plastic buttons that we can set off the side. The old lower face panel, we can set that off to the side. And one last thing that we're going to remove from here, and it's just to get the bolt out, is we've got a hex head bolt here that we're going to pull out that holds that neck strap on. We're going to pull that out and attempt to reuse that on the new faceplate, because that is all aluminum. All right, so there's our old faceplate. We've got everything pulled apart now, and now we can get started with the reassemblies. We get all those old parts out of the way so we don't get confused. And here we go, guys. We're gonna throw it all back together. I don't know what to do with my hands. OpenTX does not have a touchscreen yet, so let me Let me back up a little bit. I know I've been going for a while, and I apologize, but you know, like when you're doing this kind of work, man, you get into a zone, and you just don't want to. You don't want to like break your concentration. So I've been trying to, you know, stay in a bit of a flow and keep the work going. But let me go and look through the chat here real quick. Dana, that's a good question. You know, once you put the RadioMaster back together and it doesn't work, how hard will it be to troubleshoot what went wrong? Man, I have no idea how to troubleshoot what went wrong. If it doesn't work when I'm done, I'm just going to throw it in the trash. It was only 150 bucks. Paint the case now that it's apart. Nope. I'm trying to get this done tonight, man. So BD Tennessee, what we're doing is we're actually installing the CNC aluminum update kit that we showed you guys on the show last night. Let's see, bike, you can knows how to paint carbon fiber. We're not painting carbon fiber. We're just gonna leave that raw dogging. So I've got the new faceplate. The new faceplate is, you know, carbon fiber. Y'all will be able to see it here in a little bit. So, you know, it's not completely for nothing. OpenTX touchscreen is coming in 2.4. That is correct. OpenTX 2.4. I saw Reitza earlier today. And yes. This does come apart this much. For show. I mean, you can break it down to nothing. No, Reitza's not MIA. He's just not in here because he doesn't give a crap about RadioMaster. A lot of people don't, man. And it's cool. So yeah, we'll see here at the end when we go into the calibration screen and stuff to kind of verify that all the stuff that I'm doing actually worked. If it powers on, we're going to go into the calibration screen and we're going to make sure that the touch screen's actually functioning. And you'll get to see, you know, that as I move my finger around, you can see the coordinates pop up on the calibration screen, which is pretty cool. Anyway, for now, I'm going to go and start enjoying my line of Coke. And we're going to get back to it and get this thing put back together. All right. So, back to the camera. Now, as I was taking this apart, I was putting like screws in piles, right? So we've got two 3x15 screws, two 3x10 screws. We've got one machine head, like socket head screw, that's a machine screw, two socket head screws that are self-tappers, and those go into the top. We've got four that hold the two sides of the case together, one that holds the little light thing together, and a big giant pile of these 3x8mm screws. There's probably like 50 of them. So chances are it's either one of these, and if one of those doesn't fit, it uses one of the other ones. Now what's cool is they do give you a big old pile of screws to use, and only two screws that are this size came out of the radio. So I don't know where they plan, you know, where they want you to put all these things. Excuse me. I mean, there's a bunch of these screws. None of these came out of the radio. I have no idea what they're for. They give you a bunch of extra screws. So who knows? Who knows why they give you all that? I don't know. But we're going to get back to assembling. So the first thing that we're going to start with is this. This is our lower. Sorry, Ken. Yeah, I do like puzzles, clearly. So we're going to start by putting our new navigation buttons in. This is our red navigation button. So if for you guys that were not aware or don't know or haven't seen it yet, we are using the red CNC aluminum update kit. Now, these buttons have a very small, like wafer-sized aluminum piece that holds them all together. So you can see it that way and it looks like, oh, I mean, it's nice and metal. And when I turn it this way, you'll see that that piece of aluminum that holds all these buttons together is actually really thin. So when you're handling this piece, you want to be real careful with it. And that goes just like that onto the new faceplate. Got to get all the buttons lined up and slide them on down in there. And this is the start of our new radio, black and red. You can kind of see that carbon fiber print on the front of that new faceplate. So we've got those buttons in. Beautimous. And now we'll go ahead and pop this in, but I remember there being a little burr here, so I'm going to grab my X-Acto knife and trim that a little bit. Otherwise, this little piece will not sit flush. So right here, there's a little burr in the plastic, and I'm just going to trim that off. We should be able to, at this point, get these two pieces to kind of snap together. Now before I snap them in, I want to go ahead and get my other two buttons in, my system and my model buttons. I want to kind of get those in place too, because they don't go in very easy if you snap these two pieces together and then try to do it later. So we're just trying to maintain some kind of logical order of operations so everything goes back together as easy as possible. All right. I'm just kind of letting those buttons rest on there. And then pray that everything kind of stays together. Whoop, whoop. Damn it, man. Damn it, man. Oh shit. Looks like everything's going together. Okay. Sharp. Alright, so now we can go ahead and start putting some of these screws back in. I know that we wanted one here. One over here. We do need two more, so I'll go ahead and take the two that I grabbed out of the parts bucket. And there. And the last one on the center. Alright, so now those two pieces should be held together quite well. We'll go ahead and get our new neck strap retainer or neck strap clip put in place. You can see that right there. And let's make sure that that bolt that came off of the old neck strap fits in there and threads in no problem. Yep, and it does. But it's too long. So we're going to need to reuse, or we can't reuse the bolt that came from the old neck strap. But it does come with all new bolts, so that's about a 8mm bolt right there. We need a thinner one. We need a shorter bolt for the new neck strap retainer. You do get several bags of hardware, and we're just going to grab one of these shorter bolts out of here, and that should give us exactly what we need to reinstall this neck strap deal. Awesome. So that is now held in place. So we've got the new neck strap, and it's got two positions now instead of the original one was just a single position to clip your neck strap into. You've now got two if you want it to hang a little bit different on the strap. So that's a good note to keep in mind, that the factory screw that holds the factory neck strap, ring on is too long. You'll need to shift to one of the shorter screws that comes with the kit. So that screw we will not be using for the reassembly. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put that little light guide back in for the power button. It's hiding over here in this thing apart somewhere. I want to say that guy goes just like this. And uses that itty bitty screw, because that little itty bitty screw, I feel like if I don't put that in right now, that I'm going to lose it. I also have a suspicion that if I do put it in right now, I'm probably still going to lose it. All right. Alright, so that light guide is back in, so that's good. And then if we wanted to, we could go ahead and drop our power button in. I'll go ahead and drop it in there just to kind of see what the front panel looks like with it, but we're not going to leave it in there. And we're going to put that in right before we reinstall that secondary board assembly back into the top of the case, but we can at least see what the front looks like with that power button in place. And there you can see, like, you've got your strap mount, and then you've got that light guide assembly for the LED, and your the new power button right here, as well as your new model buttons, your new navigation buttons, and we'll see the new scroll wheel on here in just a moment. But before we do the scroll wheel, I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the LCD. Well, okay, and that goes in just like him. You know, I'm kind of manipulating it because I still have that tab where I can rip that protective cover off whenever I want. And I want that tab sticking out the front. The way that I just set it in there, that tab was, you know, kind of sandwiched between the plastic and the LCD, and that would have been no bueno. All right, so we got the LCD back in place. We'll go ahead and screw that down. And that gets 3 screws. So our LCD is back in place, and we've still got our little pull tab right there where we can rip that protective covering up when we decide that we don't want it anymore. And it's starting to look at least a little more like a transmitter here on the bottom. Alright, so next we're going to do the new board over here for the navigation buttons. Alright, and here's the new board for the navigation buttons. We actually don't need this cable because it's still, the original cable is still installed. So I'm going to pull that little jumper out of there, and we're going to use the existing jumper. We'll go ahead and set that on there, just like so. And screw that down with 2 of these 3mm by 8mm screws. And there's no guides here, so I'm not going to tighten them down first. I'm just kind of loosened. I've got it installed very loosely right now. I want to get both screws started before I start cranking them down. And there we go. I've got both screws started. That way I can, you know, have some kind of faith that they're aligned properly. So the board back here is in, so we should receive that nice tactile feedback when we press these buttons. And we do. So far so good. We've got the board installed now for the navigation buttons. Now we're going to go ahead and install our scroll wheel. First we're going to take the new scroll wheel out of the bag. So we've got a big, nice CNC aluminum scroll wheel that we're installing. If you guys want to take a look at that, it's kind of a drum with some knurling knurls machined into it. It's very well done, and this is just one big block of aluminum there that's machined. So, I mean, they did a great job with this. All right, so here's our old scroll wheel board, and what we'll do is down here at the bottom there's it looks like a potentiometer. That's actually an encoder, right? So what we'll do is we'll slide the old scroll wheel up and pull that that little metal round part out of that encoder. So we've got the old scroll wheel removed. We'll do the same here. We'll install the new encoder by just pressing that bar or that little metal stem. We're going to press that stem that you see right there down into the encoder, and then you let the round part of the scroll wheel rest against this button. So there's a momentary push button up here at the top of the board, and the scroll wheel sits on top of that. And as you depress, when you press the scroll wheel to make your selection, it's depressing that momentary push button. I don't know if you can see that really small movement right there. So we want to make sure that all goes back in. And inside the case here at the bottom, you should be able to see it right there. There's like a small little U section. And you'll see that there's a little cradle right here where the fat part of that scroll wheel rests into. So as we're installing the scroll wheel, we want that fat part of the scroll wheel to go down into that U. We'll just kind of, I'm going to put my hand up under there so I can kind of grab a hold of that scroll wheel as I'm dropping this into place. And I've kind of got everything where I want it. We're going to go ahead and get our 3 screws in. Now if you remember, as we were taking this apart, the bottom of this scroll wheel board used that standard 3mm by 8mm screw. So we're going to use that there, but the 2 top bolts on the scroll wheel board used 15mm bolts, maybe even 20. So that's what we're going to use for the 2 top bolts, is those long screws. And then on the bottom, we're just going to use that 8mm. So now our scroll wheel is installed. Feels good. We've got that good tactile feedback. Nice. But that, the model button seems a little tight, so I'm going to loosen up this top screw a little bit. Interesting. Interesting. It seems like the little bar for the model button doesn't go all the way up to the push button. Huh. All right, so there we go. There we go. I didn't have it tight enough. All right, so yeah, now I've got that tactile feedback on the model button. You know, initially that scroll wheel felt a little tight, but I can see as you use it, it's gonna, you know, kind of wear in a little bit there. And now it's already feeling better. So now our model button is getting good depression on that micro switch. The system button's working. All of our buttons are working good. All right, so now we're going to get this half of the chassis reinstalled. You know, so I wanted to get all of the LCD, the push buttons, all that stuff installed on the front half of the case before we did this part. Because it just seems like it'd be a little easier to kind of navigate and get some of those screws and stuff in and out of there, doing it in that order. You know, and to some degree, this is kind of like putting a car back together, right? You guys ever worked on a car? You know, you're like pulling all of the guts either out of the interior of the car, you're ripping the engine compartment out, you got wiring harnesses everywhere, and then you go to put everything back together and you got like 4 bolts left and you're like, oh shit. What did I do? Okay. Got a couple more screws here to get this center, you know, kind of support chassis back in. Okay. So far, so good. Now we'll go ahead and install this portion. So this is that upper panel. So everything is starting to come back together. We've got this portion that goes on the upper assembly where our 6-position switch and our 2 potentiometers go. We'll go ahead and get that reinstalled. And what's sad is I had two longer screws. I remember where they go. All right. At first I was like, I don't remember where these 2 longer screws came from, but I do now. Okay, so all of that new front faceplate is now installed. So 1 hour and 20 so far. Not bad, not bad. I'll take that. I'll take 1 hour and 20 minutes. You know, this is real time, guys, unedited, all that fun stuff. So, I mean, you're seeing it as it happens. Now we'll go ahead and reinstall the main board, and we'll start with that board. You know, this is how it's going to go onto or into the chassis, but we're going to flip that up this way because we need to reinstall these ribbon cables. So we want to make sure that those little levers are up in their 90-degree position. So we want those facing 90 degrees up, and then we'll bend them down. You know, so right now they're this way. We want those levers. We want to insert those ribbon cables in here and then roll those levers down, which will clamp those ribbons inside the connector. Always easier said than done. Maybe the small one will be easier. Come on, man. Alright, so we got that smaller ribbon cable in there now. This is no fun. Hemostats! And, you know, I'm just kind of hoping and praying that I don't tear the ribbon up with these hemostats. Come on, man. So if everything goes south, this is where it's happening. I think once I can get these stupid ribbon cables back onto the back side of the motherboard, everything else from there should be like a cakewalk, right? Getting them out was easy. Getting them back in is a real pain. Come on. Yep. See guys, this is why we edit videos. We edit videos so you guys don't have to deal with this pain. Oh, there it is, there it is. Yes. Now, for you folks at home, these ribbon cables are extremely fragile, right? You definitely don't want to try to force them in or whatever. They'll just slip right in there, and then once they're in place and everything looks good, you can clamp that down. It's a very high density connector, so it's not like you have a lot of room for error. And it looks like we are good to go there. Now, as we slide the motherboard back in, I'm just going to pull this rubber stop down at the bottom, and we can kind of see everything lining up in place. And we'll be able to see our USB port and, you know, the UART connectors and all of that line up. So you can see on the bottom, we've got like our SD card slot. Oh, there goes the SD card. We've got our USB connector, our UART connectors are all lining up there along the bottom. And we'll go ahead and screw the main board back in place. And then, you know, pray that none of the stuff that we've done so far is screwed up and that it all works. There we go, so far so good. We'll get that screwed back in. We'll plug our haptic feedback motor back in. Alright, we got that haptic feedback motor plugged back onto the motherboard right here. So that is all of the lower assembly. Now we're going to start reinstalling all of our switches, pots, gimbals, all that stuff, everything up top, which is this big octopus of things. Now before we do that, before we try to get all this back in place, we're going to go ahead and put in this. These are our buttons for the 6-position switch. We're going to go ahead and reinstall those. So those go in there just like that. You can see those coming out of that new front faceplate. We're going to go ahead and install our new power button. Right there. So that should kind of complete the look of that front faceplate. Just about. And we're going to go ahead and take this crazy thing and get it back on there. Now we do have a little piece of rubber here where the buttons are, for that 6-position switch. And what that does is each one of these buttons has an LED in there. So there's like a little piece of foam there that prevents wash between the LEDs. So it's like it prevents any washout. So when this button's lit up, that light doesn't bleed over to any of the other positions. So we're going to go ahead and kind of set this in there. Even though it looks like a big mash-up spaghetti mess, we'll lift that ribbon cable from the center. So this ribbon cable here, we're going to kind of pull that down a little bit while we set this in here. This looks like a mess, doesn't it? Alright, so that board right there is also where all your trim buttons are. So if we look on the front, we're going to see now that we've got that board in place. We've got all our trim buttons back where they need to be. We've got our trims here, 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 here. That's also our 6-button push switch. All of that's working. So we're going to go ahead and screw that back down. And that was 4 screws all the way to the ends, holding that board in place. And again, those were the 8x8 or the 3mm by 8mm screws. We got 2 more up top that we're going to put in. Oh no! I don't think I want to do that yet. Let me see. We're probably fine going ahead and putting that in now. Just want to make sure that everything else is going to fit with that board in place first, and it does. Alright, so we can do that, and then this. Okay, yeah, that'll work. Alright. So, not everything is going back together exactly the way that I that it all came out, and that's fine as long as we're not creating problems for ourselves. And that's kind of what I was just checking, you know, is putting this board in first gonna prevent us or create any hardships when we try to put that potentiometer board back in there. And that's what I was checking, and it doesn't look like it's going to. So we're gonna go ahead and pull these old potentiometers off now, because the new kit does come with 2 metal potentiometer knobs that are CNC anodized red aluminum pot knobs, and they look fantastic. So they're right here, and here's another one. We'll get those new knobs pressed on to the potentiometers. And they are keyed, they only go on one way. Go ahead and slide that in there. And get those screws in place. Sorry guys, I know I'm not like looking at the chat right now, and I do apologize. You know, like I was saying, when I was pulling it apart, you kind of get in that zone. And, you know, right now I'm kind of in that zone where I remember how everything goes together. And if I stop, I'm going to forget how it all goes back together again. And then Humpty Dumpty will not have a good day. Alright, so we got those screws in. So now we've got our 2 potentiometer knobs on the front. And, you know, right now they're kind of rubbing on the sides. And that's fine. I think as they wear in, they're going to start to feel a lot better over time. I mean, they don't feel bad, right? They're just different than the old ones. The old ones were a little loosey-goosey. They didn't feel real good. These actually feel much better, but they're, you know, you can feel where the grooved sides are moving a little bit. I may try to play with the screws and try to adjust the positioning of that board to see if I can, you know, position them a little more centered up. You know, because that's the weird thing, is that none of these boards have like centering posts, right? So they're not indexed. So you do have some room to kind of move things side to side, move them around a little bit. If things aren't, you know, fitting together exactly like they should, you can loosen those screws up, and kind of shift things around a little bit to get things centered up and fit more the way you like them. So that, you know, kind of shimmy it around. Okay, that's much better. That's much better. All right, so we got all that done. Now we're going to go ahead and reinstall that USB port. That goes right here. And you can see, you know, that as we start putting these boards and stuff back in, all those cables where everything is plugged into this board with the trim switches, I mean, everything just kind of goes back to right where it was before, which is really nice. Alright, so now we can see our top USB port and the 3.5-inch jack are reinstalled. We'll go ahead and route. Okay, get that stuff kind of situated over here. You know, get everything back over to the sides where it belongs. Get the antenna pulled back through and up towards the top. You know, what I'm doing now is just kind of positioning everything to get the multifunction module or the multi-protocol module reinstalled here. Before I do that, I want to reconnect this ribbon cable that goes from the main board up to this trim board, or this second board up top. We're going to take that lever. Again, we're going to move that up to its 90-degree position and then maneuver our ribbon cable inside that connector. Get in there. No. Oh. Come on. There it is. Alright, so we've got that ribbon cable reinstalled. Now we can bolt our multifunction module back in place. I'm just going to move a few things around. We may have to cut that old wire tie off to get this to work. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and cut that. We're going to go ahead and cut that off. And set that over with our pile of unused or unneeded stuff. Alright, so as y'all wondered what makes these radios work, this is the whole thing. This is the transmitter module. So this is our multi-protocol module. 4 different major protocols that connect to like 100 different types of radios. And our aerial antenna. It is not a diversity antenna like you see on Spectrum, but it does work really well. I'm going to go ahead and get that guy reinstalled. Alright, and on the bottom, this used 2 longer screws, so that's where these, what look like 10mm screws came from. And then up top was an 8mm screw that had this weird waxy stuff on it. Okay, so we've got the multi-protocol module plugged back in, and now we're going to plug this ribbon cable that plugs in to our main board right here. We're going to go ahead and plug that back in. And you'll see as it goes back in there, I mean, everything, you know, kind of goes back in. Like, there's that ribbon cable we just reinstalled, the one for the multi-protocol module. I mean, it's all, you know, back pretty again, plugged into the main board right here. We've got a couple of other ones here, but we're not going to plug those in because those actually go over. So this one is for the encoder, you know, or your rotary dial. And this one is our navigation board, but these ribbons go over the gimbal wires. So the gimbal wires are going to route down and into here, and then these go over those. So that's why we don't have those plugged in yet. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and then start. We're going to go ahead and get our switches reinstalled. But not the potentiometers. We need to keep those potentiometers out. Because those block the screw in the corner for our gimbals. So we're going to leave those pot screws alone for now. We're going to leave the potentiometers unmounted. So we've already got our screws back, or our switches back in place. Those switches are mounted to small PCBs, right? Little circuit boards. So the circuit boards only go in there one way. You got your left-hand side, your right-hand side, and they only go in one way. You can't mess that up. So we're going to go ahead and get our switch nuts and get those reinstalled, you know, and kind of look in amazement at the front of the radio that it's actually starting to look, you know, like a transmitter again. Oh yeah, it is all out of Wag-BD, Tennessee. Man, you know I don't hold back, GB. I'm not afraid to do nothing live. If I screw it up, I screw it up, man. What ifs? Alright, so that's our switch nuts. Switch nuts. Alright, I think I just want these switch nuts to be hand tight, because the way these are soldered onto the boards, you don't need to tighten the hell out of these switch nuts, man. You don't need to have them on there freaking 15 grunts tight. You know, we just need a little finger grunt, like, good. All right, good to go. We got those two switch nuts in. We'll get these two switch nuts installed now for the E and F switches. Oh yeah. Shit. Yeah, the switches fell out, man. I can't pick it up. Well, it looks like they gave me like an extra switch nut. That's cool. I like having extra. And hey man, it's just like rebuilding an engine, like I said. You know, when you're done rebuilding an engine, you gotta have parts left over or you know you didn't do it right. Damn, why do I have 5 extra bolts? Man, I know I put everything back together the right way. Damn it. I get 2 extra switch nuts. Look at this. I guess they give you a couple of extras in case you just completely annihilate these things while you're installing them. You know, and I can see where people that would take these and just crank them on with one of those switch nut tools could violate the anodized metal and strip that anodization off of there. That'd be pretty easy to do. Alright, so like I was saying, as I reinstall these, I'm just going finger tight with them. You know, like on a lot of the older Spectrum stuff, you know, before they started doing the PCB boards that these are soldered into, you know, these switches would twist around inside those sockets. But now that they're, you know, mounted to these PCBs, you're not going to have the switches twisting around in there. So you only need to tighten these up finger tight. They're not going to move around on you. But so far so good. I'm good with the switch mounting. And now we've got our 2 sliders, you know, so our right and left hand sliders that mount in there like so, but we're not going to install those yet because we need to put our gimbals back in. And the gimbals are the last part of the build or the new deal. So this is our throttle gimbal. That's going to go on this side. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and install the red the red beauty plates, but these also come with some spacers, you know, some color matched spacers, and it drops the gimbals down a little bit, you know, so they don't stick up so high on the radio. Now, I have not used these spacers, but I'm going to go ahead and try them out and see how they feel, because I know a lot of people do use them and a lot of people really enjoy having the okay. They really enjoy having the gimbal a little bit lower in the cavity. But in order for us to make that work, we're going to need a longer screw. Now, I do want to kind of flip this over and see how that looks. It looks pretty good. You know, we got it right, y'all. Like I said, we're going to need a longer screw to make that work. And that's why it comes with a bunch of extra screws here. So I think this bag of screws is for you to be able to use those gimbal spacers. We're going to open this up. I'm getting kind of excited. Everything is going back together so smooth. Something seems like it's going to be wrong. Even these longer screws for the gimbals are working out perfect. We'll go ahead and route this around, get it plugged in here, back into the main board. That gimbal cable will route underneath the wire that goes to the navigation button board. Alright, and then we've got our navigation board plugged back in. We've got our gimbal wire rerouted, and everything there is happy. And our gimbal can move free. And now we've got one of our gimbals reinstalled. It's all happening, guys. It's all happening. And while we're over here on this side, we're going to go ahead and reinstall this right side potentiometer for the slider. Get that put back in so we don't have anything dangling around, and we can call this right side complete. Or at least the right side as I'm looking at it. This is actually the left side of the radio as we're looking at it from the front. And for a lot of this stuff, guys, we definitely want a magnetic screwdriver, because some of these screws, you know, go way down in there before they actually reach where we want the screw to go in. Alright, so that screw is back in, and our slider is reinstalled. Alright, so the last couple of pieces of the puzzle here are installing this, what is going to be our throttle gimbal. Or not the throttle, but the aileron and elevator. So we'll go ahead and sit that spacer down in there. Get that all in place. And we'll get the beauty ring for the gimbal in place. And oh, yeah, that's right. We'll get that back in place. Set the gimbal down on top of that. Oh, we are almost home free. All right. 2 more screws on the inside. I think we're just about done here, fellas. Maybe. We'll go ahead and get this potentiometer back where it goes, which is our left slider. Or, I mean, it's the right slider as we're looking at it, but hey, it's left if I'm looking from the back. All right, I got 2 more screws to hold that in. All right, so our right and left sliders are reinstalled. Now we're going to route the cable for our gimbal and get this navigation button plugged back in. So this is our route, or the cable that goes to the roller wheel, the click wheel. We're going to go ahead and get that plugged back in because that goes up and over the wires that hold that goes up and over the wires that hold the wires for the gimbal. Damn it. All right. So I believe we have everything plugged back in. So we've got our scroll wheel, we've got our main board, we've got all of the ribbons going to the main board, we've got the navigation buttons over here. Our power button is installed and operating correctly. All of these buttons are working. Our trims, you know, and right now we're just testing physical ability to move and operate nice and smooth before we start strapping everything back together. If anything is binding up or You know, I'd rather, you know, see that happening now and get in there and fix it. Alright, so it seems like everything's working. Got good clicky feedback on our power button. I think I'm happy with how that's all working out so far. So I think at this point we can go ahead and set the back of the case on. First we'll go ahead and put the new, so we'll set that up over here. We're going to install, this does come with a new folding handle that matches that red anodized coloring of everything else. This is a couple of hex screws that hold this in. Alright, so we've got our old handle out. And here's our new anodized aluminum folding handle. We'll get that installed. Whoop. And if I had to guess, I'd say that's another one of those areas where that's why it comes with a few smaller screws. Where do those little socket head screws go? Get those. So just like the power button or our neck strap on the front, it needed a shorter screw. The same thing holds true for our handle. So our handle needs a little bit shorter screws as well. And you've got those in the CNC upgrade kit. It comes with all new screws, and we're not using all of the screws, but the ones that we do need, we're going to go ahead and install those now. Oh yeah. Alright, so we've got that new handle installed, and that new handle just kind of flips down, which is nice. So you don't have that big old thing there, but when you do have it folded out, it will act as a little bit of a stand, or you can fold it up, makes it a little easier to transport or whatever. But it looks nice, it's got that same red color as the front of the radio, so that's cool, nice touch. So now we can go ahead and put the back panel back onto the TX16S. And what we're going to do is, just like we did in the beginning where we didn't pull off the whole deal right away, so we needed to make sure that the speaker on the back panel gets plugged back in. And then the speaker on the front panel is going to plug in right here. Alright, so all the speakers are back where they need to be. Everything's looking pretty good. Something's not lining up quite right there on the front. Oh, come on, you bastard. We're so close. I can feel it. Now, the problem with just jamming this on here, right, is you've got those pins. See your JR module bay right here. You've got those long pins that stick up through your JR module bay. And if I, am messing, I mean, it's hard to see them, just from the lighting or whatever. There, you can kind of see there you go. That's those pins that stick up through that JR module bay. I'm trying to get this thing all buttoned back up without bending those pins. And there's a couple of things that don't quite line up the way I'd like them to. And it's just, getting things, just manipulated just right so everything just drops into place. Come on. What a shithead. Okay, so I think we got the top put all back together now. Well, anyway, we'll make that work here in just a second. But first, I want to go ahead and try to get the moment of truth happening. We're back to a point where we can plug in the battery Let's see if this turret's gonna power on. Oh man. Oh shit. No SD card. I forgot I flew the SD card out of it. Ha ha. I was worried. Like, oh man, something's wrong. Here we go.
Welcome to the RadioMaster TX16S. Throttle warning. Switch warning.
That's F.
Angle mode. Turtle mode off. Disarm. Switch warning. Safe disabled. High rates. Throttle cut on. Flaps up. Takeoff flaps. Landing flaps. Flaps up. Safe enabled. Safe disabled. Low rates. High rates. Throttle cut off. Throttle cut on. Throttle cut off. Throttle cut on. Throttle cut off.
Okay. Oh, that sucks. The pots are in the right spots, but they're on the wrong sides. So this potentiometer, the little thingy thing, that's supposed to be over here. The pots are switched, so I gotta take the whole damn thing apart and flip them back. But damn it, man, that sucks. But hey, it works still. So that should be a pretty easy fix. I really hope that's a pretty easy fix. I think it will be. I think that's just a few screws up here at the top. So, for those that are still watching, y'all are troopers, and thanks for hanging in there. Screw ups and all, that's another reason why, you know, doing this live is fun. So, when you're doing this on your RadioMaster TX16S, don't make sure to pay attention to where the pot covers are for your S1 and S2 potentiometers, because there is a right and a left knob, as you can see here, and mine are installed in the wrong spots because I'm a big dummy. And the dot right now is on the bottom. That's in its center detent. That should be up here. And so they're the opposite of where they should be. And I'm an idiot. but it's easy to get those out. I don't have to pull like the entire radio apart again, because that would be terrible if I had to do all of it again. It's pretty easy to get to those potentiometers. We're just going to pull those out, swap sides, and be done. And I should have paid attention to that when I was installing them, but I wasn't. And this is totally my fault, you know, having to redo this. I wonder if they have markings on them anywhere. They don't. Just that little dot on the front is the only marking that they have. So I just swapped them. You know, I just swapped the left and the right knobs, and now they're correct. So just make sure when you put them on there that your dots are where you expect them to be, because there is a specific right and left knob, and if you don't put them in the right way, they're going to be backwards, and you're going to look like a big dummy in front of a live audience, just like me. Nah, it's not that bad. That's a quick fix. You know, couple minutes in and out, get her done. Oh, sorry. I'm up here making sure that everything's turning good again. See you, Dennis. Thanks for stopping by. And we got a couple more screws to put in, and then we can get the back panel bolted up. I'm glad I didn't go ahead and put the screws in the back panel. I was very tempted to do that. I'm glad that I, you know, resisted temptation and did not go ahead and do that now, because I'd have been very upset. Alright, so our USB board is back in there. Now we can go ahead and get that back panel reinstalled. Get this reinstalled. That front panel speaker. Get all this button back up here. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and put in our 4 screws that hold the case together. So the area that I was having some issues was right here where these two parts line up. You know, you just kind of get them, you got to get that like pushed together just the right way, you know, to get everything to line up right. I know things are still looking just a little bit floppy here, but it's almost done. We got one last screw to hold the case together. All right. We'll go ahead and get that antenna back on so that thing stops flopping around. Alright, that's 1 and 2. Okay. We'll go ahead and get our Crossfire module back in there. So that's our Crossfire Micro TX module. We'll snap that in place. I'll go ahead and get the battery back in. So, I know it took a while, guys, and I apologize, man, but you know, live electronic disassembly and reassembly. Let's get that door back in there. Alright, so now the back door is, we're closing the back door, guys. That's a sad night. Alright, now we're going to get these side panels reinstalled. Okay. Got them installed on one side. We'll go ahead and get it in over here. All right. So now we've got it fully reassembled. So I don't know who remembers the beginning, but this is what it looks like now. And we'll go ahead and press our button.
Welcome to the RadioMaster TX16S. Throttle warning. Switch warning.
Yes, oh my God. SG.
Safe disabled. High rates. Throttle cut on. Flaps up.
Okay, so what I want to do now is go into the calibrate section. Let's go to return. Calibration. There it is. All right. so we're going to press enter to start. Center all sticks up. We can see things moving here. So we're centered up here. Let's get our pots recentered. And we can see everything kind of moving, and then press enter. All right, move all your pot sticks and sliders. We're just getting everything back into calibration and basically just testing the functionality of all of this stuff, because I mean, we just have done some pretty major surgery here, and we want to make sure that everything is working as we expect it to. And right now I can see that all of my knobs, my switches, 4, 3, 2, 1, that everything is working good. All right, and then we'll go down. All right, and this is our analog testing, right? This is all of our And remember when I was saying you could see the touchscreen moving. So as I put my my finger on the touchscreen, I can see stuff moving around. You see those coordinates on the bottom of the screen where it says touch panel? This is how we can verify that our touch panel is actually working, and you can kind of see the little X chasing it around. So even though the touch panel is not functional, and the current version of OpenTX, when OpenTX 2.4 comes out, we've already got that touchscreen on here, and it's going to work fine. So we were able to verify that our touchscreen's still working. Now we need to get back into our Okay, so now we're into the debug our keys, so we're going to make sure that all of our switches are working. Everything looks good so far.
Trim center, trim center, maximum trim reached. Trim center, trim center, trim center, trim center.
Oh, yep, and then this model page up. Oh, God damn it. Of course that button works. There we go. And then our system button. Yeah, so everything is working good. And obviously the return button works. So, guys, I'm happy. And the looks, I think it looks fantastic. We got our power light right there that you can see. You know, all of the, and it feels good too. I'm not like, you know, displeased with the, you know, with the gimbals being a little bit lower. Speaking of the gimbals, that is the last and final part, is replacing the gimbals, because we do have new gimbal sticks as part of the upgrade kit. And the new gimbal sticks look great. So we're going to go ahead and get those installed here too. I'm going to shut the radio down. We'll get those gimbal sticks off, the old silver ones, because silver is boring. We've got our new matching red gimbal sticks. Yes, but wait! There's more. One last piece. So these are the new gimbals, the new gimbal sticks. These are the old ones. There are some minor differences in the way that they look and the way that they feel, but I like them. They do have a fatter grub screw. So that new grub screw is also included with the bag of goodies. Okay. Pretty sure that these grub screws are for they're for the gimbals, right? Yep. They're for these are for. There we go. Come on now. Oh, the new one. I just needed to get it started. And now it is good to go. Now we will thread on these new gimbals. Or the new gimbal sticks. Sorry. I keep calling them gimbals. Ooh, this one's a little tight. That's all right. Damn. And it's not cross-threaded on there, but man, it's just not going in very well either. I'm gonna go grab something real quick that will help to fix that problem, and then just sit this here where y'all can look at that fanciness. Alright, so hopefully I have a screw head that matches the tips of one of these here. And I think that will thread in there. So what I'm going to take is a long stainless steel socket head screw, and I'm going to basically use this to retap the center of this, so I'm not like torquing on the gimbal. I'm you know, torquing on the screw instead. And getting that threading right in there. And of course, when I try to put it on the screw, it just threads right on. So maybe there's a problem with the threading on the gimbal. awfully tight on there real quick. And we can, you know, kind of rectify that too by threading a bolt on there. Instead of trying to destroy our aluminum. Yeah, I mean that, everything threads right on. Huh. Something funky happened. I'm just kind of looking at the inside. I'm trying to figure out like what's the difference between one and the other. And there's definitely something in the it seemed to go, that problematic, end seems to go on the left stick a little better than the right. So I'm just going to leave it over here on the left stick. Get that rub screw in there and tighten that down. I'm going to back this scrub screw out a little bit. I'm just trying to get them both to about the same height. And all right. So now I've got the new handles on, the new sticks. Handles are back on the side. We can see that we've got that carbon fiber faceplate now with the red accents. I mean, we're all done. The only thing I haven't tried yet is to make sure that the multi-protocol module is still firing up the crossfire module. So I do want to switch over to my crossfire model that I've got in there.
Switch warning.
Oh my god, F and G.
Angle mode, turbo mode off, disarm.
Alright, and we do have the light on the back of our crossfire module lit up. So that would suggest that all the pins in the back are still working. Man, I'm happy. This thing looks sharp. We obviously made a mess, but that's fine. We're gonna switch back up here. I ain't seen you guys in a while, man. I am super happy with how this turned out. You know, yeah, now we have like the TX16S Max. Obviously, this, you know, was live, so it took a couple of hours. If this was an edited video, it'd be like 20 minutes. But hey, man, it's all good. So, you know, I could say I apologize, but man, you know, when you're doing this kind of stuff live, you guys are seeing all the hiccups that normally happen in an edited video. So this thing looks awesome. I am super happy with it. So we're gonna, you know, line it up for the, you know, the expose here, and let you guys take a look at it one more time. In the, you know, that is just sharp. I dig the black and the red. Everything works. You know, our scroll wheel. I mean, this is one of the better feeling scroll wheels on any transmitter right now. All of our buttons are working. You know, you can actually see what the system and the model button actually says now. You know, they've got it in real big letters. Your navigation buttons down here are still a bit of a mystery. You know, this is like our return button, page right, page left, and your telemetry button. But you've got nice, good feedback on all those, and all that seems to be working. Man, what a great radio. You know, the build quality is fantastic. I mean, and the thing is, you guys saw on the inside what this thing is all about. It's not just thrown together. This thing, it was planned out well. Everything is secured very well on the inside. I'm super pleased with how it turned out after adding all of the cool, you know, CNC colored bits. You know, so those red knobs, the red switch knobs, that red handle on the back that folds down, and yeah, even with the that crossfire module in there, that handle still folds down flat. So, I mean, awesome. I love this thing, and I like it even more now. Like, this thing looks good. I'm super happy. Mr. Tughill, thank you, sir. So, man, 28 people were watching this all the way to the end. That is crazy. All right, so I'm gonna go up here and catch up with the chat a little bit. Let's see, Brian Phillips, blah blah blah. Yeah. Was the 10-minute build 3 hours long? I'm just asking. You know, at least this was 2 hours of legitimate work. You know, I never stopped. I may have complained a couple of times, but I never stopped and like looked at it funny. Anyway, I'm not gonna do that. Yeah, dude, and like this was a long video, but look, man, this was honest. I wanted to show people like the honest truth of how long it takes to do this job if you want to undertake this on your own. So for those that are curious, the entire deal here, Joe Pellegrino, I've got Crossfire on my drones. So all my quads have Crossfire. It's just a more reliable connection. Even though the quads, I mean, they kind of suffer less damage, but I have toyed around with the idea of using the Crossfire receivers on some of my fixed wing planes before, just to, I mean, it's a much more reliable radio link between the radio and the vehicle. So on the quads, Crossfire works fantastic. You can go behind things, around things, up things, over things, in things, and that link stays really solid the whole time. The thing that I I lost my train of thought, man. Dang it. And thank you, BD Tennessee. I appreciate it, man. This, here's the deal. I want to show you guys like what it really takes to do this. Now, for people that are interested in doing this, right? So the early adopters, we'll call them the early adopters of the TX16. If you have a TX16 that looked like mine did at the beginning of this video, you know, through my video, maybe you'll find some things to do a little different than the way I did them. That will help you get it done a little faster. It took me, what was it, like 2 hours? I don't know where we're at right now. So it took about 2 hours to do it. And the price on all the pieces, the faceplate, so that carbon fiber faceplate was $15, and the anodized CNC aluminum bits, that entire kit, so everything that you see on here that's red, all of that was $60. So it's 75 bucks. Now, if you look at the price difference, and here's what I love about RadioMaster. They're not here to rip us off. If you look at the cost of a TX, in fact, can somebody look that up for me real quick? I'd really appreciate it. Who can tell me what the price of a TX16S Max is? Now, there is a difference, a slight difference between this and a TX16S Max. And that difference is the TX16S Max is going to have leather side grips, right? So here, those side grips are like a rubber material, and the TX16S Max is going to have leather. Now, personally, I think that these side grips, and you know, I'll let you guys take a look at it again, that these side grips, these rubber side grips, actually look better with that carbon fiber, you know, faceplate. That we, you know, that same kind of, you know, weaved appearance kind of extends into that rubber as well. So, you know, when you're looking at the price of how much a TX16S Max costs, here's the deal. A TX16S Max and the original TX16S, how this radio started the evening as a TX16S, there is zero functional difference between those radios. It is all cosmetic. So RadioMaster makes all of that stuff available. So remember when Spectrum did the super fancy color IX12? And if you wanted it, you had to buy the whole dang radio. You know, and it was like, ah, come on, man. Can't you just send me like the green case or the white case or the orange case? No, we're only selling it as a complete radio. And, you know, it was like, eh. So I like what RadioMaster has done here. They made a different version of the TX16S. And if you want your TX16S to be a TX16S Max, all you got to do is buy those upgraded pieces. So this was $75 in upgraded pieces. The cost of the radio, the base radio, is $150, $140 depending on where you look, right? $160 in some places, right? But you add another $75 to that, it brings it up to $225. We're still less than the TX16S Max. If you look up the price of those leather grips, the leather grips are probably only, if I had to guess, I'd say about $25. You know, so when you look at it, they didn't increase the price of the radio to add these pieces. You know, what they're selling these pieces at retail is the same amount that you would buy a TX16S Max for. It's just the parts. That's the only thing that they've added, if that makes sense. You know, so I think $15 is reasonable for the faceplate. I think that the $60 is reasonable for all anodized aluminum pieces. So the only thing, so $15. So here's the deal, right? If you want the TX16S Max, but you want to save some money, you can actually do the work yourself. If the radio is $140, $150, you add the $75, and then it's $15 for the leather grips if you want the leather grips. So this was $225 to do it this way, which is less than the TX16S Max. So it sounds like they're adding a little more on there for the labor. But just to get the parts and do it yourself, you're still going to end up cheaper. So what I wanted to show you guys tonight was, can it be done? If you are electronic savvy, absolutely. This was not a hard job. It was a little tedious in a couple of places, but it's not difficult, right? If you are familiar with the assembly and disassembly of electronic components, I think that this is a very simple job to do, where if you want the look of the TX16S, but you don't want to pay that full price of the TX16S, you can save yourself about $30 and just get the parts that you want instead of what they give you. And what you end up with is a crazy cool looking, you know, all intents and purposes, TX16S Max. I've still got the rubber grips because I like them better with this carbon fiber faceplate. And everything is still working. Everything works great. I've still got all the stuff that I want. And I'll tell you guys, you know, if you're ready to, you know, take the plunge into OpenTX, there is no better deal for an OpenTX transmitter on the planet right now. You know, at one point in time, I'd have told you, you know, try out a jumper. I wouldn't even go down the jumper path anymore. If you're going to try an OpenTX radio, this is the one to get. The RadioMaster TX16S. All of the support that they have, you know, added. I mean, the value adds that they've brought to the table. If you want to bling it out, you can. They make all of it available. They do not cut your warranty for adding the bling. You know, they make it a user serviceable part, which I think is fantastic. So, I mean, this thing is great. If you're ready to take the plunge, if you want to take the plunge into OpenTX, this is the way to go. And I know not everybody wants to do that, but there's something for everybody out there. You know, for the people that love Futaba, stick with Futaba. For the people that love Spectrum, stick with Spectrum. Shit, I love Spectrum. You know, I've got an NX10 right here. Love this radio. I've got my IX12 right here behind us, hanging out. Love the IX12. But not everybody wants Spectrum. Not everybody wants Futaba. Not everybody wants FR Sky. Not everybody wants, you know, the really high grade stuff. Your Jetties. You know, some people are on a budget but still really need that high channel count. I mean, the RadioMaster is the ticket right now for people that want to dive in and explore that OpenTX, you know, world. And now they've got these receivers, 8-channel receivers for $13. So listen, you know, I'm not a fanboy of any particular manufacturer, but when people are breaking new ground, just like I said at the end of my show last night, and I'll reiterate it here, you know, when folks are doing something that's groundbreaking, that's special, I'm gonna point it out. I'm gonna let you guys know. And I think that RadioMaster is really turning heads, you know, with awesome radios, the customization options, you know, and now these receivers that are so affordable. I can't even believe it when I tell you that this 8-channel receiver was $13, and that's not even the cheapest place that you can buy it. You can get this thing on Race Day Quads for $11. For $11. So, I mean, it's ridiculous. BD Tennessee, it really depends. I tell you, if I was running the TX16S on Crossfire, I would absolutely put that in a turbine all day, every day. The link from Crossfire is solid, 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 and I would put it on the most expensive model. I would put that on a Lamborghini and drive it freaking remote control, and not even worry about it. The FR Skylink, I'm not sure. I still need to do some personal testing. I'll tell you, in the testing that I've done so far using FR Sky receivers, they perform fantastic with very little signal loss. The performance with Spectrum receivers has been exactly what you would expect it to be. They performed every bit as good as they have on my IX12. So I'll give it props. It is surprising me through every step of the way. Every test that I throw at it, it is passing with flying colors. I've got zero complaints so far about the TX16S. And ePowered RC was saying he sold the TX16S to get the NX10. Look, I get it, man. There's going to be some people that get this thing that are not familiar with OpenTX, and they're going to be really put off by OpenTX. And that's fair. That's fair. If you want to stick with Spectrum, absolutely do it. And go to rcairmarshal.com and click the Horizon link and buy your Spectrum radio. If you want to try out one of these, go to rcairmarshal.com and click the Banggood link and get you a TX16S or a TX16S Max and try it out, see how you like it. One thing that I can almost promise you is these things, they sell out almost as fast as people can get them, so the used market for these radios is going to be really good for a long time. You know what I'm saying? Joe Pellegrino, you can add Crossfire to the IX12, and here's where the big difference is. You must buy the full-size Crossfire module for the IX12, NX10s, DX9s. You could add Crossfire to all of those, but it had to be the full-size Crossfire module, which is like $199, and I think you can get a Crossfire Lite for $170. The Crossfire Micro TX, which is a 1 watt, so the Crossfire, full-size Crossfire is 2 watts. This Micro TX V2 can do 1 watt of output, and you still you're only paying $79 for it. So, $79 for the Crossfire module and the radio. You're getting the OpenTX solution, and that's why I got this instead of just getting a Crossfire module for the IX12. Because at the time, it was I think it was $205 to get this radio with a Crossfire module. The C-Mafia, the telemetry in OpenTX is fantastic. It works great. So Joe, you can add Crossfire on the IX12. Yeah. I have not done Crossfire on the IX12. So Ken Sprouse, what are you asking? Which one do I have? Which Crossfire module do I have? I've got the Micro TX V2, and that's what plugs into the JR modules on the back of these OpenTX style transmitters. Scottabot, I don't know. There's a very limited number of receivers that you can get that have PWM outputs. You can get like the Crossfire micro receivers. The Crossfire micro receivers have you know, CRSF or Crossfire outputs. So, you know, that's one way to communicate with something like a flight controller. So you can get like the Maytech flight controllers where everything on the flight controller, you know, plugs into like your servos and all that stuff. You know, it all runs through the flight controller, and then you run the micro receiver module for Crossfire into that Maytech flight controller, and you know, it has, I think, 12 channels. It can operate up to 12 channels on that Maytech module through the different outputs. You can assign whatever output to whatever you want. You know, so if you want a 6-channel radio running on there, great. It's also got throttles. It can run up to 2 speed controls. You know, if you want some crazy, you know, thrust differential or something like that through one of those Maytech flight controllers. So, you know, if you're willing to play around a little bit and research your options, because the other thing that's nice about those flight controllers, if you were to get, you know, once you get the flight controller, you install something like iNav on it, right? It's got software that you put on there. And we kind of go back into that same realm of, oh God, I don't want to mess with a PC while I'm trying to set up my RC plane. But if you are willing to, you know, to go down that road, iNav is awesome. You know, so at that point you can start adding like a GPS module. You can get like a full-on heads-up display on. I mean, you can. They have what's called a Lua script, where on your screen of a TX16S or like the Horus radios, the jumper radios, you can have this thing set up to show like your situation. I mean, you can have an artificial horizon in there, your speed strips, I mean, it is stupid the amount of telemetry that you get back from one of those. So, I mean, Crossfire is absolutely viable for fixed wing, but their PWM receivers are kind of expensive. I say kind of expensive. They're about as expensive as you'd pay for a Spectrum. But, you know, to answer your question, I don't know. I don't know why you don't see them in more fixed wing applications. I think it's because a lot of people think of Crossfire as you know, like that's what drone guys use. You know what I'm saying? That's what drone guys use. They use Crossfire. I think that fixed wing guys would be surprised at how awesome Crossfire is if they tried it. And here's another reason that fixed wing guys don't use Crossfire, because it doesn't say Futaba, it doesn't say Spectrum, it doesn't say Jetty, it doesn't say, you know, Core, it doesn't say what they want it to say. You know? So, is Crossfire awesome? Absolutely. Drone guys know this. They've been using it for years. Would fixed wing guys be happy with Crossfire? I really think they would. I think they'd be just excited beyond belief at how awesome and reliable the signal is from Crossfire. Why doesn't it get used more? Doesn't have the right name on it. Yeah, Pilot Jerry, I mean, that's where it's at, you know. There's just so much that you can do with these things. So we're not gonna dive, you know, down that rabbit hole, not today. Dude, Spectrum is very smart. Look, Horizon got a lot of things right. There's a few things that here recently where I don't necessarily agree with them. I don't necessarily disagree with them. I'm kind of indifferent about some of the decisions that they've made lately. They don't make a lot of sense to me, but then I look at it from a different point of view, and it kind of does make sense depending on, you know, what you're looking at. You know, and it's hard to run a big business like that. You gotta, you know, sometimes you're gonna make decisions where you're rolling the dice, and sometimes the dice roll is you know, is worth it, and sometimes it's like, oh God, I just really screwed that up. So anyway, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank everybody for coming and checking out this thing. Again, if you want to try out the RadioMaster TX16S, all the flavors of the TX16S are available on Banggood. You go to rcairmarshal.com, click on the Banggood link, search for the TX16S, and you're going to find it. If you've already got a TX16S and you're looking for all the replacement parts, you can find all of the aluminum upgrade kits in a variety of different colors. I think they have 6 or 7 different colors, and you can find those on Banggood as well. You know, I have affiliate links if you want to try them. You know, if you want to get it from Banggood and help me out, I appreciate it. If you want to try it from somewhere else, search on Google. They're sold all over the place, right? But when you buy them from Banggood, using my links, it helps. And so that's why I tell you to get them. Anyway, guys, thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Thank y'all for hanging out, and we will see you in the next video. Y'all have a great night.